banged up boxes, uncooked entrees, and the horrors of a hot car. If you want to make the most out of your frozen food aisle escapades, then there are some mistakes you're going to need to stop making. Stat. First things first, you may want to set aside some time to browse the freezer aisles, as you could be missing out on some awesome products that could make your life easier and your meals healthier. Skipping over most of the frozen food aisle is a huge mistake, as you'll see more than just pizza snacks and ice cream once you venture past the frozen vegetables. For one thing, you'll find frozen versions of foods that normally spoil very quickly when you buy them fresh, such as avocado, or that you might not use up all at once, such as gyoza wrappers. You'll also find pre-cooked versions of foods that would otherwise take a long time to cook when dried or fresh, such as grains or beans. Insider interviewed chefs about the foods they recommend getting from the frozen section, and while some are not a surprise, others are things you might not have considered. One chef said frozen red beans and rice was a winner because the beans were cooked properly, and you wouldn't risk overcooking them to the point where they become pasty. Another recommended frozen grains to cut down on the cooking time, which can be less than fast for non-frozen grains such as brown rice. If you trust yourself to look through all the offerings without buying too much and breaking your shopping budget, go see what the frozen sections at your nearby markets have to offer. We hate to sound like your parents, but close the darn door if you're not taking something out of the freezer. You might not be responsible for the store's utility bills, but you're still wasting power by making the freezer's motor run more to accommodate the sudden influx of warm air. You're also creating additional thaw-freeze cycles for the food right at the front of the shelves. You might not think this is such a big deal in stores, given that the ambient temperature can already feel kind of chilly, and because so many stores have refrigerated sections that are not enclosed. But an open refrigeration case is not the same as a freezer case with an open door. Doorless vertical storage cases utilize air curtains, which are blasts of cold air that form a barrier between the cooled items and warmer store air, according to the University of Washington, and they're usually used in refrigerated units, not freezers. Cases with doors don't have that same barrier that stops warm air intrusion when the door is open. The door is the barrier. If you keep it open, you waste energy and risk thawing the food. If you head to the freezer section first and then do the remainder of your grocery shopping, the time between you taking the food out of the freezer aisle and putting it into your freezer at home could be long enough to make the food unsafe to consume. The risk increases if you decide to stop somewhere else between the grocery store and home. Even quick stops, like getting gas, mean that the frozen food is going to thaw even more, and this is a big frozen food mistake. Instead, have the grocery store be your last stop for your errands, and make the freezer and refrigerator sections the last aisles you visit during your shopping trip, says North Dakota State University. If you know you're not going to bring frozen food home within 30 minutes, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics recommends keeping a cooler with ice or ice packs in your trunk. But you may say, total defrosting isn't immediate. Wouldn't food still be safe for a longer time because so much of it remains frozen? Well, not according to the USDA. Frozen food is still subject to the 2-hour safety window, or 1 hour when the outside temperature is above 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Think of it this way. When you take frozen food out of the freezer, it begins to defrost immediately. While some parts may remain frozen for a longer time, other parts have already thawed. Plus, your car's internal temperature may be a lot warmer than you think. If frozen food lasts a very long time, then buying frozen food in bulk would be a great way to save money and reduce how much you need to shop, right? Not always. This sounds like a logical strategy, and, according to EcoMerge, buying in bulk is an excellent way to reduce your carbon footprint. However, the reality doesn't always meet expectations on the food storage front. When you buy a bag of frozen food that is much larger than you need, a lot of that food can suffer from freezer burn, which Inverse says can take hold after only a few months. The food may still be safe to eat, but who wants to chip pieces off an icy block of wrinkled broccoli? Freezer burn is the result of the drying process that happens to frozen food over time. The better you package your food, the longer it will be before you see spots of freezer burn. If there is a bulk deal that you simply can't pass up, repackage the food before tossing it in your freezer. For example, the Food Safety and Inspection Service at the USDA recommends overwrapping meat and poultry that you intend to freeze long term. The packaging from the store is good for short-term storage, but is too permeable for long-term use. The USDA also says that removing as much air from the package as possible is key for good long-term storage. When you grab a frozen product off a freezer shelf, you might find traces of ice on it. If you find a lot of ice on it though, put it back. Those ice crystals are a sign the product partially defrosted and then refroze, says Today, and there's no way to know for how long the product was sitting in warmer temperatures. If the product contains food that should be loose, like frozen vegetables, avoid buying any packages that feel like a solid block, and you can't easily break the pieces apart. Even if the food was not stored in warmer temperatures for very long, the slower refreezing process in a store's freezers can degrade the quality of the food. Most frozen food is quickly frozen by manufacturers, and Penn State Extension says that this rapid freezing creates smaller ice crystals in the product that do less damage to the food. When the food defrosts and then refreezes in a store freezer, which isn't meant for flash freezing, the ice crystals that form can rip apart the food's cells. The University of Minnesota Extension says this can lead to softer food, such as tomatoes that become mushy when thawed. This can make food that you intended to eat raw unappetizing, but it shouldn't be a problem if you plan to cook the food anyway. The packaging on a frozen meal may indicate that you'll get an appetizing dinner in just a few minutes, but that's only if you follow the instructions on the package and ensure the food is fully cooked, rather than just warm. Not all frozen food is fully pre-cooked. In many cases, the ingredients in frozen meals are only partially cooked, or even raw, and if you don't follow the instructions, you could end up with undercooked food along with food poisoning. The USDA warns that you should check packages of frozen food for labels such as ready to cook or cook and serve, which are clear signs the food inside is not something you can simply heat up. Complicating this is the fact that the instructions for microwave cooking, if that's what you'll be using, rely on you having access to a microwave that uses the same wattage as the manufacturer's test kitchen. If the manufacturer's instructions are for a higher watt microwave and yours is of a lower wattage, you'll need to cook the product for a longer time to ensure it's fully cooked, according to Michigan State University Extension. NBC News says you need to watch out for the age of the microwave as well. Older microwaves typically have lost some of their power. A huge mistake people make in the freezer aisle actually occurs outside of it, putting frozen items they don't want on random shelves. To the people who do this, we ask you, do you not know how freezing works? It's bad enough when the unwanted frozen items are placed in the wrong freezer compartment, but when you leave them outside the freezer, they melt and ruin nearby products, not to mention becoming ruined themselves. Users on Quora point out that having to go through the store and return misplaced items means the store needs more employees, which in turn raises costs for consumers. But it's not just the cost of hiring more employees that you have to worry about. It's the cost of dealing with the food waste and potential disinfection protocols. One Redditor noted that sometimes people will leave raw chicken on non-freezer and non-refrigerator shelves, and cleaning that up would require ensuring the shelving and adjacent packages are clean enough to safely handle. If you decide you don't want a frozen item, head back to the freezer aisle to return it. Buying frozen vegetables and other basic foods allows you to keep healthy items on hand for a longer time and reduces food waste. Whereas fresh spinach might wilt within a week, frozen spinach can last for months before developing freezer burn. However, never assume that a frozen food product contains only the ingredients listed on the front of the bag. Always check the actual ingredient label. Healthline warns that simple frozen vegetables can have added sugar or salt, and that vegetable sauce mixtures may have more calories, sodium, or fat than you realize. Even if these ingredients and nutrient counts are acceptable to you, you'll want to know they're in these products. The risk of added sodium is even worse if the frozen vegetables are part of a larger frozen meal. You may think you're buying a basic-looking meal with plain vegetables as the side dish, but Houston Methodist Hospital points out that these frozen meals may use unbelievable amounts of sodium as a preservative. Now that you're heading to the freezer section last, you grab some frozen food and are off to the register to pay. That speed may sound appealing, but it leads to a final mistake: not inspecting the packaging for damage. Some frozen goods, like vegetables in bags meant for microwave steaming, have special vents cut into them. However, holes, uneven or large cuts, missing seals, or loose lids are signs that something happened to the packaging. These can occur by accident or be done deliberately. Either way, the product could contain unwanted substances. The packaging could allow anything from dust and bugs to germs inside the bag or container, and you waste food when you have to throw away something that you didn't check before buying. The FDA says that deliberate tampering is rare, but that they have stepped up inspections to address the possibility in food production settings. No need for paranoia, but you should look over each bag or box and notify a store employee if you find something that looks like it's been opened.